With every election comes new political parties. The Independent Electoral Commission has listed 589 registered parties, 275 of those contesting nationally. Now, it'll be one election manifesto after another, campaign rallies all over, and you, the voter, will eventually make a choice through the ballot. Among the new parties contesting the 2019 general election is NUMSA's Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party, SRWP, represented tonight by Phakamile Hlubie-Majola, the Black First Land Party with its Deputy President Zanele Luana in the studio, and Saneem Esop is our political analyst for this debate. Very warm welcome to all of you. Phakamile, let me start off with you. Why the need for a party?
Well, you'll remember, Jane, that as way back as 2013, NUMSA identified the need for a workers' party, a party which would fight in the interests of the working class. This was after many, many, many years of having been part of the alliance within the ANC and as part of COSATU, where they felt they could influence the government's policies to be more pro-working class. And I mean, as early as 1993 already, NUMSA was actually having discussions within the organization about the formation of a workers' party. And it was really after decades of a failure on the part of this government to radically transform the lives of the working class majority that NUMSA took the decision in 2013 to give birth to the SRWP. That by no means that it is a NUMSA party, as has been dubbed by some in the media.
It's easier to say NUMSA party than the party name that you've chosen.
Well, I mean,
quite a mouthful.
I think the public will get used to it. Yes. We call ourselves the SRWP for short. It's the Socialist Revolutionary Workers' Party. The choice of the words and the name were very specific because we're very clear that our agenda is to promote socialism and a socialist South Africa in our lifetime. So, and when we talk about it being a revolutionary party, we are not mincing our words. What we mean by that is that this will be a force for the working class to mobilize them so that they can overthrow the capitalist system and impose a new society which is actually for the benefit of all, and not just for the benefit of a minority.
Let me bring in Zanele. How important is a name when it comes to a party and what it represents and its policies?
Yeah, I think before I answer that question, it's very important to just make a very important point around the idea of democracy, and democracy being centered around allowing as many voices as you can have in society so that people can be free and advocate for what they stand for. But what this then creates, I think it creates a multiplicity of movements, but at the end, they really agree on one agenda. I think a great example is last year, where civil society organizations such as Service A, opposition parties and the ruling party all defined themselves differently, but they rallied behind one agenda for regime change to remove a democratically elected president. I think the name for a political party is very important. For example, we call ourselves Black First, Land First, because this is really the agenda that we stand for as Black First, Land First, and for black people. And the type of society that we envision is that would prioritize the plight of black people. And we believe that to struggle and to get to that point, we must put at the center the land question, get it, which was unjustly taken from black people, and create a new society that is going to respect us as a people so that we can rescue our
Certainly
people.
It shows you what you are all about. I mean, it's very clear, isn't it? I mean, when you're looking at parties and when you're trying to decide what sort of party to get involved in, how important is a name, and how important is it that we are seeing new parties springing up all the time?
Well, I mean, I think, you know, a name is important for many reasons. chief amongst them is how you enter yourself into public discussions. And I think what we saw certainly with EFF, I mean, even going back to COPE as the breakaway parties from the ANC, their choice of name was heavily debated in the public, you know, Congress of the People, who does that belong to? And then going to the EFF and how they used their name to really position themselves in the political spectrum and show what their politics was about. And I think that's generally the trend with political parties and names, you know, in this era at least. In terms of new political parties, it's definitely true that, you know, in South Africa we have a representative proportional representation system, and that we do give space, you know, technically and in the political system for as many political views to have expression as possible. However, there's a practical side to this that we should consider, right? And that's that political parties must represent something on the political spectrum. And simply having a proliferation of political parties dealing with some specific issues, sometimes regional issues, is not always helpful in terms of the daily life of politics. And I think what's important is how does a new political party insert itself into the daily political life in South Africa? And that's really the question for me.
And I suppose how you distinguish, when many of your policies mirror other parties, how you distinguish yourself as the leading contender there. How do you do that?
It's very important. I don't think there's a need for many political parties in the country, because this also opens up a space where people enter politics not only to push an agenda that is going to be pro-people and address the needs of the people, but to enrich themselves and build careers out of this. And I think it becomes a big problem. What we really need is, given the type of movements that we have in South Africa, is to agree on an agenda that is going to rescue black people. And that agenda now is that of radically transforming the economy and the idea of really land expropriation without compensation. For example, Patricia de Lille was here today, and she has just formed a new party. And a lot of people are having a lot to say around her being a woman, and she's obviously going to be the presidential candidate of that particular party, right? So, but no one seems to be asking the questions in terms of what has been the role of Patricia de Lille when she was in particular part of the Democratic Alliance in sidelining and entrenching the economic marginalization of black people. The fallout of Patricia de Lille, for example, is with white men and white women in the Democratic Alliance who stand for an agenda that is anti-black people. So should we really support Patricia de Lille, for example, on the basis that she's women, while we know that she stands for an agenda that is anti-people? The party is going to probably lean towards the right. As you know, she comes from the PAC. She formed the Independent Democrats movement and was the DA. This party is going to be right-wing. We know de Lille, for example, is associated with imperialists such as Lord Robin Renwick. So is it enough to be woman, but advocate for an agenda that shuts down women?
Excuse me jumping in here. We've got a caller on the line. I don't want to lose Tobela from George. Go ahead, Tobela.
Hello, Jane. You know, Jane, there is no need for more political parties. I mean, in South Africa, it's been proven that political parties, they destroy communities. If in a particular community, I'll make an example, in Cape Town, in Khayelitsha, there's a problem of sanitation. The problem of sanitation does not discriminate and say, oh, you belong to DA or ANC, so I'm going to, bypass you. But what politics are doing, they are dividing the communities. Instead of communities working as a unit, instead meetings are being called by DA, and only those that support DA attend meetings. As a result, there is not much progress. So personally, I don't think there's a need for political parties. In fact, if it were according to me, I would close all political parties. We'll probably have 2 political parties. Even that's just for debate's sake. Other than that, South Africa needs community leaders. We need leaders that will unite communities and deal with the problems of community.
Okay,
problems of sanitation and other problems do not discriminate.
Okay, we got that. Would you like to answer that?
Well, indeed, I think what Tobela is highlighting more than anything when he talks about the conditions that the working class majority finds themselves in, townships, the poverty, the suffering, he's actually expressing the frustration of many members of the working class. But what he's not saying is that these problems are there because of a systematic failure of capitalism. Capitalism is a system which breeds inequality, poverty, and suffering for the majority. That's the only way that capitalists can succeed and make obscene profits, is that they must exploit the working class, abuse the working class, and enrich themselves. I mean, we've seen this. Oxfam has churned these reports out year after year, proving precisely that. Effectively, when he talks about community struggles, what he's actually saying is that what we need in South Africa is for the working class to unite, because the working class is in communities. The working class is actually the only class which in South Africa, whose voice has been completely snuffed out.
Okay, let's put this
and really, if you want genuine change and genuine equality and genuine transformation, which is what he's calling for, then you need a party that's going to promote socialism and the working class.
Okay, Tasneem, I mean, what sort of role can parties play here? Because I think for many South Africans as well, they just see politicians as benefiting themselves and not actually getting on the ground and helping them. How do you make that work?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think to narrow democratic politics to just elections and, electoral politics every few years is really doing a disservice to the political space. Right?
But that's when you see politicians out
sure.
in the forefront, don't
Absolutely.
you? On the ground, quickly getting those votes in.
Yes, and I mean, it's a high time for politics, right? But I think what we've seen in South Africa, and certainly what we must hold on to, is that participation in politics happens across many formats, right? And when we're talking about community struggles, that's an important place. Communities, community meetings, community protests, things that happen on the ground are very important in the political space. So we shouldn't just narrow it to political parties and what they do. And I think that's where I take, what the caller is saying seriously, is that there is this disenchantment with political parties. And certainly there's a sense that there are limited choices in terms of political parties. And to add that, when it comes to, everyday politics, political parties can be highly fractious and can play quite a divisive role in some senses.
Let me quickly ask you, what sort of message you were talking about, anti-capitalism and, land reform. What are the sort of messages that resonate with South Africans? And I know, we're made up of many parts, but what should a politician be aiming to say and speak the way they should speak?
Well, I mean, I think political parties also need to stick to their points, their values in a way, right? Because what that means is that we are able to judge political parties on what their ideological basis is, on what their policies are, and so on. So I think that it's also not just about what's on South Africans' minds, what are the hot topics, what are the hot issues, but it's also about what are political parties bringing to the table in terms of our politics. And I think we need to also think about it in that way a little bit, to also hold them accountable to their views.
What about the youth? Patricia de Lille says she's going to really focus on getting the youth. I mean, that's a smart move. Many of them feel that they're out of the political arena. What should be done?
I think 24 years post-1994, and considering the reality of the democratic dispensation in South Africa, the role of political parties has almost been useless or fruitless due to political parties being available to be manipulated by white monopoly capital to push a particular agenda that is not going to drastically change and shift the minds of the people and the lived experience of the people. So what we believe we need in South Africa, and this is according to the movement that I belong to, which is
Let's address the issues relating to the youth, how you attract their votes. What is it that's going to make it work?
I was getting to that point. I think you need a revolutionary movement. I think the youth of South Africa is ready to fight. And I think where the youth of South Africa, in particular black youth, is tired of being tenants in the country of their birth, the youth in South Africa today, they can realize that we are not in control and we can't get jobs, we can't get to universities, recent fees must fall things. The youth is hung on substance abuse, there's nyawupe, there's all kinds of things. The youth we believe is ready to fight now. And in order for the youth to be so motivated to fight, you need a clear agenda that the youth are going to be able to grasp. And at this point, it is the agenda of defending the sovereignty of the country and also getting back the land and talking about how means of production are going to be democratized and moved to the hands of the people.
Okay, briefly if you will, because we nearly run out of time. How do you get the youth to fight at the ballot box?
Well, first of all, you need to address the issues which affect the working class. The youth in the working class are affected by poverty, inequality. They're affected by the failure of the capitalist system. All of these things which have resulted in thousands of people demonstrating in our streets every single day, lack of housing, electricity, etc. And really, the key issue here is to be very clear about who the enemy is. All of these political parties, in one way or another, are promoting the same system, which is capitalism, which continues to breed this type of inequality. The only genuine transformation that can take place is to destroy the system. And if that's not your agenda, then you're just wasting time. That's what the ANC has been doing for the last 24 years. Let's leave it there.
Pakamile, Shlubi, Majola, Zanele, Luana, and Tasneem Essop. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, the IMF has listed things South Africa needs to get right to fix the economy. Should we be worried about their real intentions?